Some years ago, this class took a big left turn. It sort of threw some people off the train and found a different group. Essentially what happened was that all of the years I had been practicing Kundalini Yoga, I had been reaching for a state of being that I never attained, at least not for any length of time. That state of being was always, in a way, an abstract, but a lot of it was concrete for me because my experience with Rudy and my experience in teaching was that I would always find this place of what you might call depth and expansiveness, flow, openness, availability, so many words to describe this state of being that always felt somewhat like it was in a comfort zone. And it could always, in my mind, get bigger and bigger, and my brain told me that it could be truly cosmic. And that if I kept working and working and working, I would find a way to expand the boundaries of my depth to a place of truly cosmic proportions. And I have to say, there were times during my practice where I actually felt that was happening. Sometimes for a day or two, sometimes it went as far as several months of just absolute connectedness and vast being. And then almost always it would slip away. And I would always feel I did something wrong. What was it that I did wrong? Why did I lose it? At one point, I took a 10-day retreat, Vipassana Yoga retreat, something fairly alien to me at that time. I never thought that sitting for long periods of time would be beneficial, and in truth, those of you who were around at that time may remember that I actually thought I failed the class. I hated sitting for 10 days. I thought it was extreme on my body, extreme for my head. I tried to leave it in the middle. The people who were running the course said, no, no, no. You have sutras hanging out all over the place. You need to stay here for the whole operation. So I just toughed it out, and I stayed for 10 days. I kind of like the silence part, and I like sitting, but I don't like sitting 10 hours a day. It hurt my back, it hurt my hips, it hurt everything. And I didn't know why, and I kept working through it as best I could. On the last day when we were allowed to speak to each other, one of the guys there told me that this was his 30th retreat. May have been his 60th, but it was a lot of retreats. And I kept wondering what this was all about. And actually, I remember there were these two nuns who sat through, they're Buddhist nuns, but they sat there every day, and when we would take breaks to go out every 2 or 3 hours, they never got up. They sat the full 10 hours. So I said, well, that's clearly where I'm failing, because I can't sit 10 hours straight. They probably sat through the night. I honestly don't know. But I couldn't do that. The last day I met the guy who had been there for 30 retreats, and he said he didn't even care about the teaching. He just liked having a place to sit that fed him every day, and he didn't have to worry about anything but just his own private practice. I thought that was interesting. And then he told me about a book he had been reading that had been very important to him. I mentioned a teacher named Ramesh Balsekar who wrote a book called Consciousness Speaks, and I was intrigued enough to go out and buy the book after this course. And in a way, that was the beginning of the change, because although I liked a lot of what he had to say, I kept feeling he was saying it, but he wasn't quite putting me there. You know, when you read people who really connect, they actually give you a moment, or more than a moment, of actual immersion in this awareness. Rumi did that as a poet, still does it to this day. You read Rumi and You actually are there for however long you get to be there. Rudy, as a teacher, would put me there during his teaching, and it was always extraordinary to be in this place that just was somehow deeper, more grounded, more vibrant, quieter, and more real than my daily normal activities would allow me to experience. But Ramesh Balsekar had another teacher, had his own teacher, and his name was Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he wrote a book called I Am That. And I was very interested in finding that book, and I did, and as soon as I started reading it, even reading the back cover, I said, it just poured right through me. And I pretty much started talking about it immediately in class, and I could see people's eyes glaze over. And I also bought 2 full boxes so I could get these books to everybody in the class, and I don't think anybody who took them home ever read them. And if they did read them, they had no idea what it was saying. He was a true non-dualist. He was a guy who basically said, you're already what you're looking for, and that essentially you don't need to seek to find what you already are. This is so alien to the idea that Rudy brought us. Rudy was work, grow, expand, evolve, get beyond your shit, find your center. Rudy had enormous demands and extraordinary potential for all of us as we worked. And someone like Nisargadatta basically said, what are you working for? What are you trying to get to? You are sitting in that very space. You are that very thing. And so I would begin to talk about that in class, and I would see people go, what's he talking about? What's he doing? What's he doing? And they would get confused by it. Then I met Eckhart Tolle, and I went to 2 seminars with him in upstate New York, 5 miles from my house, or not even 5, probably walking distance, where he taught at Omega. And each time I sat with him for 5 days each, more and more this took hold for me, that there was this extraordinary presence called now. And I found now to be very meaningful. And I didn't experience it so much. I tried in every way I could. But I just knew it was real. I knew this was real, that all of this seeking out there somehow was not, I was only going to fail at. And that now, you can't fail at now, really, because you're already there. So I was very compelled by that. And then I started to, as you know, I got a video called Closer Than Close from a guy who made a documentary about 3 seekers who had found awakening. And I watched that, and it was sent to me. I didn't even really want to look at it because I just thought I got so much on my plate, but I thought I would look at it. I didn't quite believe it. You know, to me, awakening was something that only happened, as I've said this before, to men with turbans and long hair who lived in caves. I never thought awakening was something that was available to the masses. But this was a documentary about 3 guys who had awakened, and as they were talking about their awakening, I wasn't quite convinced of it. And then as they would get to the very end of their talk, they would go, and you could just see it. You just saw it. It was there. It was just there. There was something other that they had arrived at. And it wasn't other, and that was the whole thing. It wasn't other. The minute they talked about it, they were where I would describe where I got to in my class with Rudy. They were in this place of depth, of openness, of flow, of availability. They were so simple. And one of the guys, I've talked about him a lot, named Bart Marshall, had his first awakening on a battlefield in Vietnam in the middle of an explosion where he was blown out of his bunker. And he really seemed to speak to me. And the next thing I know, Bart wrote to me, sent me a screenplay, and said, I want to know more about screenwriting. And I thought, oh my God, awakening, you become an awakened person and you want to write screenplays? I'm trying to get away from writing screenplays. But he sent me a screenplay, and it was actually very good. And the 2 of us started a dialogue through screenwriting that moved very quickly into this non-dualistic teaching. And then I went to he invited me to speak at some of his gatherings. I kept wondering why I should speak there. I clearly was not awakened, but I said I would. And I presented myself as the token unawakened guy. And after my second talk, the following day, had an awakening. And I've described it, in one of my talks, 10-10-10, October 10th, 2010, is where I talk about it on the class talks. And that was the next huge turn in this class. And again, a lot of people flew off the train because it was no longer what people had signed on for. What people wanted in this class was attainment of something. Everybody comes with a sort of a different idea of what they want to attain. Mostly it's dressed up in words like peace, serenity, bliss, freedom from their own mind, freedom from suffering, freedom from the fear of death. It goes on and on. But they want to attain something that they will get by somehow becoming really, really cosmic, really psychedelically vibrant and huge. And I could see it in people because they would sit in class and they'd go, take this breath, and they would really work, and they would expand their heart and expand their chest and expand their third eye, and they would sit there. And in Rudy's class, especially in the later part of his teaching, people would do that and go, pow! And they'd fall right over in the class, and they would shake, and they would have these enormous kinds of physical experiences. And I was one of them. I had them all the time. These kriyas, they were called. And these kriyas were proof positive to me that something unbelievably important was going on. And I would keep having them, and then I would still go back to being the same old schnook I was, and I didn't know what it meant. Why wasn't this translating into, psychedelic explosiveness and truth? And I have to say, I'm talking about this because I got an email from an old friend the other day who was an old student of Rudy's, still practices Kundalini Yoga, and who began his journey with a major psychedelic trip back in the 60s or 70s. Met Rudy, saw as I did that he was the one person I ever met who had the dynamism to sort of bring me back into what I would call psychedelic mode. I don't want to go through my whole psychedelic experience of the 60s, but most of you who know me know that it was transformative in every possible way. It was a death and rebirth experience. It took billions of years in sort of non-linear time, and it just completely took me apart, took me into the realm of death, if you will, from which I returned without understanding why. And the reason that I was returned, they finally said to me, was to tell people about this. And I began to, that was the beginning of my journey, which even led me to Rudy. This guy just took another trip recently on an explosive psychedelic journey, had full Kundalini rising, as he described it, saw the universe in terms of these exquisitely powerful, terrifying dynamics, which anybody who's done psychedelics probably has tapped into. Something speaks to you in an enormous way on those drugs. Something tells you this is ultimate truth. And yet, as I said to him, and I say to everyone, including myself, somehow or another, unless you OD, you come back to this. Or just to this. And you realize in some funny way, this is that. This is the worldly, minute, mundane expression of that enormity. And he's trying to understand, this friend of mine, why we have diverged, why he has, all he talks about is wanting to be a being with full Kundalini rising. He wants to be that, he's still pursuing that with great depth. And I'm trying to say to him, you're already that. Not in the dramatic terms that you're looking for, but in the simplest terms. This is that. But clearly to someone who's just had a body-ripping, soul-wrenching experience, that doesn't make sense. And of course he's already returned to this, just as we do. He's wondering why he can't have that state of permanent attainment. You know, he's going to feel for the rest of this lifetime, and if there's such a thing as multiple lifetimes, that he has to continue on that journey of seeking and reaching and doing all of these things. You know, I don't know what one does. I know that when I first started this out, there were people who tried to drill holes into their third eye, to open their third eye. There are all sorts of incredibly bizarre exercises and things that people do to attain higher consciousness. There was a guy at the Kumbh Mela, I just read about him the other day, which is being held in India this March, which is the gathering of 200 million people on the banks of the Ganges to sort of pull in the blessings of the universe. And there's one guy who keeps, his hand has been up over his head for the last 45, 50 years, and it's withered into this weird thing of weird fingernails, and people bow down before him because he's had his hand above his head. And I look at all this and I go, I get it. I understand austerities. I understand all the things Buddha tried to do and finally said, stop. Don't do this. You don't have to fast into oblivion. You don't have to do all of these austerities. You just have to live this middle path. What is the middle path? This is the middle path. Waking up in the morning every day is the middle path. You're on it. You're on it. Now, I wrote a long letter to this friend, and I'm not going to go into all the details because I could be conceivably wrong. Let me just say that. It is possible that there is a psychedelic vastness of being, which I know I visited, that is a permanent condition. It's not the permanent condition I seek at this point. So anyone who comes here to study with this particular practice has now entered into the realm of what's called Advaita Yoga, or non-dualistic practice. Non-dualism is everything I've been talking about for the last, in fact, it's, if you go back to all of the talks that I've recorded since 2006, they're all Advaita Yoga. I didn't even know it was Advaita Yoga back then, but I was already teaching this thing. I'm not really teaching Kundalini Yoga. I haven't represented that yet on my website, although I intend to. I am teaching Advaita Yoga. That's what we're doing here. Advaita. It's called non-dualistic yoga. It's the school of knowing that you are already that which you seek. Very powerful part of yogic tradition in India. But here I am still teaching Rudy's work. And I want to explain why I still teach Rudy's work and why I am so grateful to it and why I still think it is fundamentally important. I'm not teaching it to you to get your Kundalini to rise and carry you into some mystical otherness. I teach Kundalini Yoga because it is about working with all of the forces that you find on a daily basis in your life that keep you from being still, that keep you from being the deepest being you can be. Most of us in the world find ourselves caught by the incredible dynamics of human experience. You wake up in the morning and they're already there. There's the, oh my God, how am I going to do this, of the day. It's so much stuff. And as you get older, it's more and more stuff, although I now believe it's pretty much equalized throughout your whole life. It just plays out differently. But every day you have your struggle. You have it, whatever it is. It's emotional, it's intellectual, it's physical, it's biological, it's interpersonal, it's relationship, it's everything, every day. And most people really don't deal with it well. And the incredible thing about what Rudy taught was that you can draw all of this noise of the universe swirling around in your brain and draw it into your heart and ask for help to let go of it. Help to surrender. Just let go of it for 10 seconds. Oh, What a relief it is for those 10 seconds to actually be free of that stuff. Oh. And then he says, take a second breath and bring it into your navel chakra and expand it a little bit, and you'll start to feel this enormous stillness and bigness in you go deeper, deeper than what you experience in your heart. And you feel this thing happen, and it is... Now, is it psychedelic? Yeah, sometimes it actually is psychedelic, which for those people who still want those experiences, they can have it. When you expand your abdomen down and out with a deep breath in you, you might actually experience a shooting of energy, which will actually throw you like that. It will go around to the base of your spine, it will go up your spine to the top of your head, and it will shoot out into the atmosphere, possibly. It's a big deal. It's a real experience. And it can actually, it'll throw you off your chair, which it used to do to me all the time, and then I started sitting on the floor, and then it will throw you on the floor. And you lie there in a state of discombobulation and just complete disintegration on some level, and then you come back together and you sit back up and you meditate. Well, that experience is very powerful. It's very powerful, and after a while you might think, well, that's what it's all about. I want to have that all the time. And I know in my own practice, I kept reaching for that explosive moment, which I could get pretty easily in those days, and it was kind of absurd. I could be standing anywhere and just have a Kundalini rising experience, and it was big. It was really big. I've talked this before, but there was a time when I went to say goodnight to Rudy at one of his teachings, and I gave him a hug, and the minute I hugged him, and I was lying on the floor, and I just lay there, and then I got up and went to hug him again. And it kept happening, and finally I just waved goodbye because I couldn't handle the magnitude of the experience. It was just too much. But here we are in this class, and what we are really doing is trying to find this inner space and to have a teacher sit here and help us. What is the teacher doing? What am I doing? What was Rudy doing? I'll tell you, it's called energy work. Energy work is being touched by, ideally, someone who knows how to touch. But it doesn't even have to be. It doesn't have to be someone who knows how to do it, because when two people touch, I'll use the Christian example. When two people gather in my name, I am there. When two people touch lovingly, something is present. I cannot do anything but tell you that it's there and you'll know it. When you touch another person and you're unobstructed and you feel what I call love or connection, you feel something that is unbelievably, deliciously comforting. It's what we live for. I remember standing on a boat with some people in this class long ago and being totally nauseous. Bo had rented a boat and we were all sailing out into the Pacific, and I was hanging over the edge, and when one of these people in the class, Mary Jansen, walked over to me and she just put her hand on my shoulder. That's all she did. And all of the nausea went away. I was so comforted. So comforted. And then I look at my granddaughter, she can fall and bang her head, and it's like, oh my God, it's going to blow up into this big bruise, and it's going to be terrible. And she's screaming and screaming. And I walk over when I'm around, and I take her and I just put my hand on her forehead, or I kiss her forehead. And she has such faith and trust in me, in her grandmother, in her parents, that when we do that, she stops crying. The pain goes away. It's over. How did that happen? It's just touch. It's touch and faith in the one who is touching you. Rudy used touch, but mostly in the beginning he used looking. And what's that about? It's called being seen. Being seen. We all want to be seen. Every one of us wants to be seen. What does it mean to be seen? It means to be apprehended, if you will. Is that the right word? To be aware of you with no judgment. No judgment. No critique. Just deeply calmly, lovingly aware. It's an absolution. It's the most wonderful thing when someone actually is with us, looking at us, and accepting us totally for what we are. I cannot tell you how liberating that is. We all seek that in the world. Last week I said we're all walking around saying, love me, which is part of it. But love me is only part of what we're asking. The other thing we're asking is, see me. See me. You might even be saying, acknowledge me, but seeing you is an acknowledgement. Holding this gaze that we do in the class is a kind of deep version of acknowledgement. It's a true seeing of each other. You all know, and I've said this before, if you're sitting on the subway and you try that in New York with someone, you can get hit over the head. But if you are with a person allowing yourself to be seen, you actually will experience connectivity. Again, when two people gather in my name, I am there. Presence arises. Presence. What is presence? Presence that comes in touch and in being seen, hugged, acknowledged. Presence is this state of absolute open stillness. And you feel in presence unbelievably there. Not asleep, not distracted, not caught up in your mind, not worried about tomorrow or the next second, not thinking about yesterday. You're just there. Presence is this state of true, simple being. And we rarely experience it because we're always caught up in the emotions of what's happening, or what happened, what will happen, what could happen, what shouldn't have happened, what might have happened. We're all caught up in that, and we never feel this. We never feel it. So one of the rare things about coming to a class like this is you get to experience presence. When you really let go, time seems to stop, past and future disappear, and there you are. And it feels, the content of presence is what I call okayness. It's not pure bliss, although it can be, but it's really just like, it feels so simple and good. It's a quality really of, I said this last week, deep sleep, only wide awake. It's completely nurturing, reviving, uncomplicated. It's just, and that's all we're looking for. Now here's the incredible thing. This presence is like the depth of a lake or depth of the ocean. The surface may be roiling with all sorts of storms and activity and emotional upheaval and nervousness and anxiety and God knows what. But if you go down below that, you always find this still presence. It's never not there. The only thing that's not there is you. Your attention is always in the roiling stuff on the surface. So all we're doing really is allowing ourselves to be touched and seen, which means we penetrate through the noise for a moment, and we allow ourselves to go into the depth of stillness and to realize the most important thing is that it's always there. You're never not part of that. But you can live an entire life and not know it. That's the scary part. You can live your whole life so distracted, so caught up in your emotional fears, in your wounds for a million reasons we're wounded by life. All of that keeps you away from this. And so what we seek is something that will bring us into that place of being. As I said last week, when you get there, you are really experiencing what I called universal self, because Your story is not activated in that moment. Your history is absent. Your future is not playing in the game. You're just there, and there is no name attached to that there. There is no name at all. It just is. It's the communal, singular depth of being. And we all have absolute access to that place. We all are that place. It's our true nature. It is our true universal self. So when you guys come to this class and we do this Kundalini thing, whatever you want to call it, this acknowledgement of seeing each other, of being seen, when we do that and you actually let go, in other words, you sit there and you say, is he reading my mind? Oh my God, what does he see in me? Is he going to judge me? Is he going to... As soon as you let go of that and you let me in, so you have to actually actively do something, which is let go, which is why we ask for help to let go, because it's hard to do. But if you can find this help in yourself, you actually let go and you feel this falling away of stuff, and for 10 seconds or a minute or whatever you are lucky to get, you will experience your universal self. You actually come here and taste that. It's available. It's an amazing thing. When awakening happens, it's the more amazing thing is that this past and future that you are able to let go of for 10 seconds or 20 seconds or a minute or a month, whatever you work it into, all of a sudden that past and future is gone. You have no idea how it went, why it went, but you are in a state of constant gratitude that it did go. Because it feels like what you feel in this class when you let go and surrender. That's what it feels like. But the thing that's so strange, and this is something that confuses people who want to have this great experience, is that that person who wants to have the experience disappears. And all that's left is, I won't call it the experience because it's no longer someone having anything. It just is what is left. What is left. And it's never not been there. What is what you are. And it's always there. It keeps arising, instant by instant by instant. And you never know what the next moment will be. So you walk around in a state of profound uncertainty, but with nobody worrying about it. There's just the uncertainty of the next moment. And so you don't create because it's really there, a kind of trust. That the next moment you put your foot down, the ground will be solid. The next moment you turn the faucet on, water will come out. Pretty amazing, really. And then there's a part of you that begins to appreciate the amazing nature of all this. That the thing we took for granted, this mundane moment-to-moment life that we tend to live with such annoyance, it becomes a life of miraculous truth. It has depth and content beyond understanding. And so after awakening, the universal self that you are begins to learn what it is. It just learns. It's just constant awareness of what you are. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and simpler and simpler and simpler. And it's not like you have a cognitive hold on it. It just is there. And it expresses itself. And it expresses itself in all these fascinating ways. It turns you into someone for whom honesty is absolutely essential. You find ways of settling conflict with simple truth, openness, sharing. You find a way of living that is no longer about anger, hostility, and warfare, but about peace and ease, because you look at how easy and beautiful it is, and you kind of look at why everyone is so crazy. You see everybody out there being crazy. What are you doing to yourselves is what you want to say to everybody. What are you doing? Why are you so caught up in this ephemeral, non-existent craziness that dominates your life? Why? And of course I know why, because I did it for my whole life. So I'm not like somebody who isn't aware. I'm somebody who has arrived at a place where I no longer need to do that. Now, I've expressed this before. The awakening experience, although you fall away, instincts for all that old stuff still keep coming up. So as much as, in my case, the Bruce experience has died, Bruce elements are in place continually, and they have to be observed and, if you will, scrubbed away, melted away, or whatever it is. It's not like the full context, it's just like pieces. And everyone I talk to in the awakened arena describes this. Stuff still keeps coming up. Old inclinations, old ideas, old thought patterns still arise. And you still have to deal with all that. But what really happens is that there is this deeper part of you that functions. It's a little bit like how you go through your day. Oh my God, I'm having so many problems, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And you go through the day, and then there's this thing that happens when you go deeper that goes, boy, I got to get my shit together. I got to get my shit together. What is that? What is the deeper thing that knows you have to do something? The stuff that's not just there blabbering away, but it's actually trying to take control of it. It's trying to say, I got to go to the gym. I've got to do this. And then that thing, when you go even deeper, that actually makes you go to the gym. What is that? Well, that's the deepening of the inner voice, if you will, the inner thing that speaks to you. Whatever that thing that speaks to you is, it has enormous depth. And there comes a point where it's there all the time. It would be called wisdom. It comes up. It's like wise men always can find this. King Solomon, I assume, had such depth, he always was able to go to that spot and speak. Most of us lose it on a regular basis, and some of us lose it really badly. Really badly. You know, I talk about trains of thought that take you to Siberia. You know, a little thought, and you're in Siberia for 4 years. You know, thinking about this stupid thing that's taken over your whole life. You know, I should get revenge on somebody and go shoot people. That's what happens. It's really crazy. It's true craziness. What we're doing here is the counteractive to all of that. You come to a class like this because something in you has already said, I got to get it together. Something in you has connected with that. Something in you actually gets you out of bed on Sunday morning and brings you here. But as you can tell by the numbers, it's fewer and fewer people, because so many people want to come here and get this thing that will give them power and ability and personality and relationship and career benefits and on and on and on. And you come to get all that, and I'm telling all of you, it won't do that. That's not what it's for. It brings you to this place of unbelievable still awareness. And I can only tell you, out of that still awareness, you will find the truth of relationship, the wisdom to bring something into the world, the capacity to find a level of creativity you never would have found in your nervous, normal mind. Everything you're looking for is in this non-personal state. It's all there. Everything you want in life is going to arise from that. It always has. Those who are really deeply creative are connected to this. They don't know that specifically, that they don't have a context for it, but they are connected. People who are doing spiritual work at least have a language for what's going on here. You know, there are so many people who awaken without a language that are in mental institutions because there's nobody talking to them about this. There's nobody able to explain it. Can you imagine what it's like to have you fall away? Have you completely fall away from you? For many people, it's horrifying in its original expression. If you've been working spiritually for many years and it happens, it's a completely natural thing. It's like a piece of fruit falling off a tree, a ripe piece of fruit falling off a tree. But if you aren't ready and something yanks you off, it's like, get me to a hospital quick. We are doing something that is highly evolved in human experience. This is, in a certain sense, the beginning of the end of the human journey. Awakening is not the end exactly, it's really the final step. It has its journey, it has a journey, it has its own journey, and you will learn what that is by going through it. Every one of you who gets there. And every one of you can get there, honestly. I mean, all you have to do is say yes to it. You can all say yes to this in an instant. Not that that will actually make it happen, but it will make you totally available to its happening. And that's what's important. And in truth, for me, what I actually said, and this I'm hearing this from more and more people, I said, I don't care if it happens. I don't care. I'm living this life whether it happens or it doesn't happen. I am living a conscious life, working with the depth that I can find, opening every day to my own possibilities. I open to uncertainty, I open to relationship, I open to being. I do that every day. So, well, who cares if it actually happens? And as soon as I did that, it happened. If I kept asking for it, I suspect the I asking would actually be the obstructing element. The I that wants it is the problem. It's a very delicate balance, because partly you have to say I want, and then partly you have to say I surrender. But that's our practice. That's exactly our practice. I want and I surrender. And you do those two things in tandem, and life opens, you open, your life becomes this extraordinary availability to truth. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it will promise you a rich, conscious, wise, open, available life. And I can tell you from experience, that's better than all the achievements that you can have. Because if you have full-bodied appreciation of that pear you're about to bite into, that's more than many people walking around with their Grammys and their Oscars and all their other things who barely appreciate it for a tenth of a second. Biting into the pear is available to everyone. Everyone. Taking another breath, walking outside on a day like today and going, everyone can do that. So, we're on this path, all of us together, in a school of teaching of yoga that embodies much of what Rudy taught, maybe all of what Rudy taught, and this school of thinking that for all of the effort you're going to put out, there is nothing to do. And if you can bridge those two ideas, and the mind can't, but if you can just allow them to operate inside you at the same time, you will be on the way to this realization of who you truly are. And there's nothing more that can be offered in life that you want than that. Any questions?
Well, I think I have a question, and yes, I'm not sure what it is or how to frame it, or if it'll emerge. I apologize, it's somewhat rambling. I remember, the experience you tracked, and I always felt that this was a very sort of organic gradualism to this idea of the work, the reach for, to you already are that. Just reflecting on my own experience, I feel like somehow it's like sort of stuck in the mud, between worlds. Like, the reaching for enlightenment, it always felt far away, and it was very appealing, but it always felt a little unrealistic. And then the idea of this non-duality, of just we are that, I am that, I am that, it always made perfect sense, but I can't say personally I ever felt it really. I mean, glimpses of it. Just the sort of the offshoot is a feeling of being between worlds, that working with the world, fighting for this existence, embracing it, it does inevitably feel like a life of the mind, with incursions of universal self, incursions of higher self-appreciation, gratitude. And that feels satisfying to a point, but only to a point, because it never feels brilliant enough or amazing enough or remarkable enough. The mind only takes us so far. And I am that aspect of it still feels remote to me personally, and the in-between is a kind of, okay, just it feels more honest, and it feels more truthful, and it feels like it's about a kind of acceptance. It never feels like quite enough, and part of this may have to do with storytelling, because I spend my life teaching it, writing it, doing it, and when I'm teaching it, the teaching itself feels fine, but it does feel like when I'm teaching is how to go to Siberia. It's the human story, not the end of the human story. In the human story, no matter how much reaching and testing, it just never feels like enough to me. Even not only the stuff I teach, but what I'm doing in my own work, it never feels like enough. Well, nothing feels like enough.
Let me say two things. One is...
So was that a question?
No, but let me I know.
I don't want to go. No. I just want...
First of all, the end of the human story is everything I'm talking about. So, first of all, ask yourself, why do you keep coming here? What is it that gets you out of bed on Sunday morning to come here? And I'm telling you that every human being wants to get to the truth. Even if they obscure it as much as possible, that's what they want. Every story wants to speak truth, even when it fails. I just watched all the Academy short films yesterday to vote. Not one of them got to truth. They all aimed at it. One of them got really close to explosiveness, but they couldn't get there with this. And it's so frustrating to see how hard it is to arrive at that place. But every one of these guys and women were trying to create a story that led to truth. We all are, in a certain sense. Not all, because there are some people just want to make a movie to make money or want to tell a story to sell it. But there are a lot of people who have a deeper purpose in it. And I think even the ones who think they're trying to make money, they're trying something to get out there. We're storytellers. Those of us who are storytellers have a reason for pursuing that. And finding that clarity is very important. And I know you as an artist, that's what you do. And the mind is not an enemy. You have to understand that. Mind is not enemy. It's one of the amazing creations of the universe. Emotions are amazing experiences. So it's putting all of that together, but allowing it to be guided by something that is wise and deep, rather than just struggling around up here using the top of the brain to figure it out. It won't. It's what's being sought and what's wanting to express itself is profoundly deep. And your journey here into that depth is what allows your stories to have content. It's what's really important. It's why your career is going to, why you will have a singular voice, why you already have a singular voice. So if you allow yourself to keep this journey alive, everything in your life will be an expression of it. If you don't have this journey, then everything is an expression of your excitable, moment-to-moment unknowing. And that creates unbelievable problems in human life. Unbelievable. One bad story after another, one complicated, inbred sort of confusion that just replicates itself in so many different ways, that so many people live in that state. And they're miserable. And I can't even begin to talk what I'm talking to them because it's so far removed from what they understand. So if you really want to talk to the masses, you've got to go in there and really just touch a little bit of this, because it's all they can handle. You can't give the whole thing. I can't even give the whole thing to people I love and who understand what I'm saying, because you can't. But you can offer as much and as real a version of it as possible, and then hope people touch it. The greatest exponent of this really is Rumi. And Rumi, to me, is the absolute perfect poet, because he turns it into entertainment, he turns it into beauty, he says things that absolutely don't connect in the mind, and yet you absolutely get them. I think every great artist must aspire to something like that. I think it's what we all try to do. And I think it's what you're trying to do. The muddy confusion in the middle, part of the process. I don't know how one gets past that. It's a lot of mud, you know. But Rudy would always talk about the lotus flower that floats above the water in the pond, you know, beautiful sunlight floating on it, butterflies around it. The root system for that lotus goes down, 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 down into the muck. It grows from the muck. You grow from the muck. Don't look at it in disparaging terms. It's absolutely essential to the journey. Mm-hmm. And you'll know that 10 years from now, or whenever the time comes where this finally clicks in, which could be tomorrow or in 2 minutes. Whatever, it doesn't matter. At which point, nothing changes. I mean, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. If you were to awaken tomorrow, nothing would change in your life. It's just there won't be any particular personal striving. It will be universal striving. It will be the universe wanting to express itself entirely through your body-mind construct. That's all it will be. It'll be the exact same story, the exact same thing, but there won't be any me, mine, I, any of that stuff. It'll be for something much higher, and you will be a servant of that. Clarified? Anyone else? Okay. Thank you guys. Love you very much.